Okay, so this is the Ottomans versus the Ayyubids. As usual, I'll skip through. Actually, I won't skip through too much. I'll highlight in a fair amount of detail there. So firstly, get on sheep. This is my suggestion. And I've just played a game where I've tried to do this thing of sending all the villagers on stone and then coming back and then going on sheep. But it didn't really, and that's what I think his name is Beastie or something like that. Another YouTuber who's playing the Ottomans suggests to do. But I didn't really see the point, to be honest, because you have to then get a load of wood to be able to afford the military school. The point being you'll get a military school earlier than you would otherwise. But it's not that much earlier than I would get a military school anyway. So yeah, I didn't really see the point of that. I would just suggest to do a normal thing where you'd scout around, get some sheep, put around 7, 8 on food, 1 on wood. The 1 on wood from very early, will end up giving you enough, hopefully, for another house to ensure that the population doesn't get slowed down by the lack of houses. And then, yeah, so I've put 3 on gold now, which is sometimes necessary to get that feudal age, and there we go. On this particular one, I put the lumber camp way too far away. That was, in retrospect, a poor decision. I should have put it just here. And then I also put this mill way too far away. I should have just put that here as well to get the shoreline fish. That was an error, I admit it. Get that scout, which is good. So there you go, now I've started to do the obvious, which is to put a lumber camp there and a mill there. I'll switch it to income per minute so you can see. Doing pretty well in income per minute. Ooh, and they've already started to raid, so they do manage to take a villager out there and go after this scout, but that's fine. I do make a few mistakes in this one. But it's still a pretty good game. They are doing really well in this game. They do really well with raiding, particularly well with raiding. And they're basically just chasing me around, as you can see here. They're just chasing me around, and I have to kind of constantly move. And that's a good way to start, especially with the Ayyubids. Now, for me as an Ottoman, as the Ottomans, it's essentially about survival. And kind of hoping and praying that I can survive until at least kind of Castle Age and ideally Imperial Age, because that's when the Ottomans start to come into their own, especially against Ayyubids, because Ayyubids are pretty strong early game with these raiding units, but then comparatively that I would suggest weakens in comparison to well upgraded units. So I'm very slow there. Just leave that villager to die, which is not great. And there we go, I've got the next landmark coming up. Imperial Armory. I don't have much to defend against these raiders. I should have put a tower. Maybe here, but I don't, so there we are. So they, as you can see, they're just raiding me very effectively, and I'm being a bit rubbish. So we're about equal on. He's just coming to Castle Age, I've just come into Castle Age. We're probably about equal now. I've got significantly more on food because I'm eating up all my sheep. 10 minutes in, being a bit slow on house development. They're doing very well with raiding still. Started to get together some pikemen and a few janissaries. Started to begin the process of actually bothering to protect my units. Even with their kind of pretty effective raiding though, as Ottomans you can be fairly quietly confident against the Ayyubids because these camels are really not strong against janissaries at all. Janissaries just mow them down. So as long as you can survive until a little bit later in the game, you have a decent chance. And there you go, you're starting to put some defences in. Tower. Trying to chase them off a little bit with the man-at-arms. Mangonels come online, and that's obviously incredibly important. I've said in previous videos how important the mangonel is for Ottoman early defence. Because without the mangonel, you really, unless you, I mean, obviously the obvious thing to do is create cavalry, but for me that's a waste. I don't do that basically. I see that as a bit of a waste of resources. I just like a big old army about halfway through Castle Age or into Imperial Age with men-at-arms and janissaries. That's my preferred. And then siege equipment coming up behind. Mainly siege equipment being mainly mangonels and ideally a Great Bombard. So the focus for me now is to I'm on age 3. Okay, the focus for me now is really starting to build up and upgrade units. So I need a fair amount of gold for that, which is why I've got so many people on gold. I've now scouted most of the map. This is obviously incredibly important. The gold over here. There's gold there as well, which is important as well. Let's. In terms of going through this, the vizier, sorry. I normally go Anatolian Hills. I have watched a video where they recommend the Meteor drums. I disagree with that. I don't think they're that useful. Field work, potentially, if you are going for relics, for example, if you're going against Holy Roman Empire, and you need to kind of deny them relics because relics are really useful for them at that point. In terms of the second rung, it's always military campus. I don't think there's any question of that. This extensive fortifications can be quite useful, but for me there's no question. Military campus, you increase the military schools you can build. Then advanced academy, that's another no-brainer really. The ability to train janissaries and increase production speed of military schools. I can sometimes use janissary companies if I need extra men immediately, extra janissaries immediately. Either they're attacking or I'm attacking, and it's really important. And then for the last one, normally do trade bags to increase trade gold, or possibly Great Bombard if I'm attacking and I really need it. So now we're starting to get to a point in the game where the Ottomans kind of start to make some sort of sense. I haven't got seemingly. I'm basically only just starting to do the upgrades, which is a bit slow on my part. Making sure that you get the blacksmith upgrades. I normally go bloomery first, fitted leatherwork, iron undermesh, and siege engineering as a priority. Siege engineering being a key priority, allowing you to kind of construct battering rams when you're in their base, which is obviously very useful. The only one that's not a priority is steeled arrow, because I never really use archered units. So steeled arrow I never really bother with. Being a bit slow here. I think now the plan is, and what's the next one here? So it's obviously Advanced Academy. They're still raiding, but at this point I've actually got a force to counter that raid, which is good. And so now they are thinking about properly raiding and really going for it, but they decide not to. 19 minutes in. I'm on the defensive in this game because of all their raiding, and so I presume that they might be a little bit ahead of me in terms of unit production. And so I keep, in a previous video I've done where I've gone too early, and so I'm very aware of that, and I don't want to go too early, such that I'm leaving my villagers defenseless. There's a reasonable kind of argument that I should have more defences around these, because there's how many people here? 24 villagers. So I should probably defend them better. I'm not doing too badly. Put up a few towers around the place. I always try and, if possible, get the spring balls in placement. I don't know if they've been nerfed or what's happened, but the arrow slit and upgrade is just doesn't seem to be very strong at all. And the cannon is just too expensive. 375 stone. It's too expensive for a building that can very easily be destroyed, in my view. So at this point in the game it's about creating a decent number of troops. Currently got 59 villagers, 44 military units, and I'm doing some decent upgrading in terms of that. I've got quite a few on wood. I'll start to move them across onto farms in the not too distant future, I'd suggest. Perhaps slightly too many on wood for the moment, and slightly too few on gold. This is presumably what he's doing, yeah. So trying to dominate the map with gold mines. They're coming in now. They're coming in hot. So this is the attack. A little bit early for me, because I've been a bit slow in this game, but nevertheless I've still got a very good chance of defeating this attack. Why? Because these desert raiders are weak, they're poorly armoured. These archers are weak, they're poorly armoured. Only strong units are these infantry, which are highly armoured. I've been quite slow at responding. Not that slow, but a little bit slow. So that's cost me definitely a few seconds worth of damage. I do then decide to garrison my villagers just to keep them a little bit safer and also get those kind of arrows, because of the fact that these are quite light attackers. These arrows are going to do some damage. not as much damage as perhaps I want them to do, but nevertheless some damage. And then the mangonels are going to easily deal with these archers. So I'm actually, at this point, if I was, you know, I don't actually need to be too worried about this attack. In terms of the matchup here, men-at-arms and janissaries against very lightly armoured units. They've come in a bit early and without. These units are quite good though. If they'd have perhaps made more of these gulams, if I'm pronouncing that right, then it might have been more of a fight. But I'm able to bear a significant amount of fire on the units, and therefore, and also absorb their sword blows fairly well with my men-at-arms, even though I think probably they're better. 195 sword, 15 melee, man-at-arms, 15 melee, 14 melee, sorry, and 155. So the enemy units here are better, but there are not enough of them to really cause me any problems. I've garrisoned the villagers here, and also just sent a couple of pikemen against these to just kind of continue the fight. The ballista from here is also doing some nice damage, which is useful. Now, as soon as they've come in for that raid, it's quite important not to waste any time at this point, I'd suggest. And actually, they've just lost a significant amount of units. You need to push You need to push it now. You need to push the attack. I don't care about this mill. It's a stupid placement anyway. So this is actually where they should have attacked. If you see, if they'd have attacked around here and have killed quite easily a significant number of these villagers in the first place, then, as I say, I would be having some serious problems. But they don't, and I'm able to, in a minute, put up a nice Seagate tower here. Again, I'm being a bit defensive this game. It's just because basically last game, or one of the last games, I lost because I went too early, so I'm being a little bit more defensive. Despite being more defensive, I am advancing with a fairly small force, fairly beaten up force, but nevertheless I'm advancing. That villager's just coming along for the ride. I'm not quite sure what he's doing. Oh, he's going for a stone line apparently. I don't think I actually mean to take that villager along, but there we are. Now I'm looking for the upgrade. They haven't got into Imperial Age yet, so I'm looking to upgrade before they manage that, obviously. And then what would be a good idea is not necessarily to put everyone back on wood, because I've already got quite a lot of wood going on there. What I need is gold or food. They're still doing the raiding. They're now raiding with heavier units, camel lancers. I try and, you know, this would have been nice to have a tower there. It's not kind of the end of the world that I'm not able to, but I do definitely need to concentrate on taking this area as a general kind of point because of that gold resource. If I just go reveal all for a second and go onto their thing, they've actually only got 33 people, 33 villagers, and 2 of those villagers are idle, which for me is crazy. So I think they've kind of concentrated on just building up that military attack for the previous attack, and perhaps they're going to try and do that again, but they're really not creating enough. They haven't got the econ. Possibly intentionally, I don't know, but they just haven't got the econ at the moment. Especially if they're trying to fight Ottomans late game. This is the kind of ratio that might work for an early game victory, but not for late game. I kind of messed around here a little bit. I accidentally destroy this house, or nearly destroy this house. It's not really the focus of this raid, to be honest. The focus of this raid is to just cause some damage to a town centre, and at the same time, stop the villagers from farming. Right, stopping the villagers from farming is in and of itself quite a useful thing to be doing. I just swap back to me, and they obviously quite, fairly easily deal with that battering ram. My aim is not to, not to win this battle, but kind of distract them, and also, ideally, I would have taken out some villagers. I don't think I really do that, but it definitely distracts them, as gives me a bit of time to get my econ kind of on track at least. They've currently got no food income, and I've got 1,000, so it's good for me. 26 minutes in, I'm Imperial Age, they are not, and I'm pumping out Janissaries. Oh, they're not actually, are they not upgraded yet? Ah, they are currently being upgraded. Yeah, they're being upgraded to Elite Janissary. That needs to be an early thing, right? With Ottomans, you do need to upgrade to Elite as early as possible, because it does make a difference, and I'd suggest also man-at-arms, very important, as veteran spearmen are, but slightly less so. Man-at-arms would be more important than veteran spearmen. Bit slow on upgrading my farms, precision crossbreeding. Not too bad on. This is about what I would expect to see in terms of upgrading blacksmiths. I'm still quite early into the Ottoman Age. Mining camp's done, and lumber camp's done. So again, in terms of my gameplay, I always prioritise econ, and then kind of once I've got the econ sorted, then it's a case of getting those military units. And it is always a bit of a risk. If you're facing English or whatever, you do need to adopt a slightly different play style. But there you are. And perhaps if you're facing English or Chinese to an extent, enemies that can put out a decent force early game. In that case, perhaps the idea of getting a load of stone early and then creating those military schools early is actually quite a good idea. But normally I'd probably recommend not bothering. Oh look, I've upgraded that to cannon. So I can now. They haven't attacked yet, but they have got a very obvious force up in the top there. And so what I'm going to do is reposition my units, even if they are causing some trouble down here, and I'm having to deal with that trouble at the same time, which is a bit annoying. Do that with literally one veteran spearman. Seemingly that's enough to drive them off. It's a bit silly, but whatever. But yeah, obviously repositioning those units ready for the attack to come in. Veteran spearmen taking on 2 heavy camel lancers or whatever they are. I've now put a tower up, outpost, and I'm now seemingly going a bit crazy with this gold mine. 39 people on gold, on one gold mine. It's not going to last long. Anyway, as I say, it's quite a nice adversary to have as Ottomans. I don't know why they haven't bothered creating more villages. They really should have done. Their econ is incredibly weak. they're relying, I think, on this last push, this last attack, creating some Tower of the Sultan siege towers, with a plan of presumably kind of driving themselves in and destroying everyone. But unfortunately, I've got already, it's not a huge force of Janissaries, but 23 elite Janissaries are still going to do some damage, as is 8. Perhaps I need a few more of them. But men at arms, what's going on down here? Okay. So what I've done is I do this sometimes, and probably it's a bit silly, but I've created a flow of Janissaries going to potential weak spots. And they're going in for the attack now. So they're going in for the attack now. I'll slow it down a little bit just to make sure we can see what's going on. So very easily destroying the camels. A nice load of mangonel shot landing on those archers. The mangonels are now destroyed. What's firing? It looks a little bit like the Imperial Armory is firing, but it's in fact the Seagate Castle back here, which has a border, has a range. You can just kind of see it here. So if people are within that range, oh sorry, that's the stone, that's the cannon range. This is, yeah, this is the ballista range. It looks like, and in fact, the Janissaries are kind of just acting as almost physical blocks at the moment for the Tower of the Sultan. So they're being just a bit annoying. At this point, I've taken out the majority of their kind of dangerous units, which is always good. I'm a bit late to remember, and indeed a lot of these units are not even in the battle, which is a bit silly, but just check what's going on here. Oh, this is what I'm sending units to harass from these archery ranges. And so in a minute I send these to this gold mine here, which is quite useful. Or perhaps I've already done that, I'm not sure. I'm a bit slow in remembering, and it is worth remembering in these scenarios that villagers are pretty strong against any kind of siege equipment like this. Both battering rams and these towers, villagers are quite strong against, and hopefully that I'll evidence that in a minute. They do nearly take out this military school. I don't think they managed, but I may be wrong. Yeah, and this is also an example of how rubbish the Janissaries are against any kind of siege equipment. They're just absolutely awful. They're also absolutely awful against any buildings, so that's why really although I would recommend a decent number of Janissaries in any army, at least 20, like here, because of that, because they're so good, even on very heavily armoured units, you do still need to balance that with men at arms or cavalry or whatever else to take on stubborn buildings and siege equipment and whatever else that you'll need to destroy. In terms of buildings, obviously it makes much more sense to use some kind of siege equipment. I actually don't like Ottoman siege equipment particularly. I think the Great Bombard's a bit of it's definitely not as good as the French cannons or the normal Colvins. Great Bombard's kind of overrated in my view. These are pretty useful, but again not particularly great against buildings, obviously, or other siege equipment. It's really the Colvins. If the Ottomans had Colvins or the French equivalent, they would be absolutely unstoppable. good end. Good game.